How you get, everybody? Welcome to the Bricks and Bleachers podcast. All things Chicago Cubs in under 10 minutes. A pair of Cubs are heading to the All-Star game next week. Team sees a brief run of success, and the trade deadline is quickly approaching. We'll cover all these topics and more just ahead. Cubs are in the midst of a 6-game losing streak following a pair of losses to the Baltimore Orioles and a disappointing series in Los Angeles last weekend. Cubs are 34-54 entering Thursday's play. That is the 5th worst record in the majors, but still good for 4th in the National League Central. Cubs really never had a shot last night, a 7-1 loss to the O's, and Tuesday's game seems like a summation of the entire season. By that, I mean the Cubs scored early, scoring in the first and second innings, and then went scoreless after that. Orioles, meanwhile, took the lead in the 4th, added another one late, a 4-2 final. Weekend series with the Dodgers was exciting, but winless. Cubs were competitive in all 4 contests, but did not pull out a win. And this is a surprise, as the Cubs came into the series with one of their hottest stretches of the season, where the Cubs had won 9 of 13, including a season-long 4-game win streak. Now, that does say something. When you are over halfway through the year and your longest winning streak is just 4 games, you know it's not been one of your better seasons. But still, the Cubs had put together a solid couple weeks heading into Los Angeles, winning 4 straight series, taking 2 of 3 against St. Louis, and the same against Cincinnati, and against the Red Sox, and against the Brewers. Those teams, aside from the Reds, those teams are all really good and likely heading to the postseason. Dodgers are good, too. A lot of adversity, especially with injuries to their starting rotation. But again, they take all 4 games from the Cubs, 5-3, 4-3, 4-2, and then 11-9 on Sunday. Cubs bullpen recorded a blown save in 3 of the 4 games in Los Angeles. And something else you don't see too often, one pitcher recording 2 losses in a 4-game series. One is a starter, and the other loss coming as a reliever. Mark Leiter Jr. got knocked around in his start on Thursday, and then he let one slip away as he made a relief appearance on Sunday. Tough series for Rowan Wick as well, as he recorded 2 losses in the series. Although, Cubs did see the return of a couple arms to the rotation, so it's not all bad news. Marcus Stroman returned Saturday night on a pitch count that limited him to just 4 innings, but he did look pretty good. Drew Smyly, however, only made it to the 3rd inning of his return on Sunday. Let's look at the latest on the injury front. Cubs have had a lot of guys rehabbing and close to returning. Kyle Hendricks, though, is not returning anytime soon. He's the latest starter to go on the injury list. This came last week in Milwaukee, where he exited his start early. It's a right shoulder strain. Same as he experienced in early June, he will not return till after the All-Star break. Alec Mills has been battling injuries much of the year. In Boston, he threw just 7 pitches before having to exit due to a lower back strain. He's battled a similar injury earlier this year. Meanwhile, Wade Miley inching closer to a return. He left his start against the Yankees on June 10. There's still no return date. Daniel Norris is back. He returned to the bullpen last evening following a finger sprain. Frank Schwindel getting time at Iowa, said to be progressing well from a back strain. Nick Madrigal also playing at Iowa, but he left a rehab start on Sunday as he battles back from a groin injury. And Jason Hayward added to the injured list on June 30th due to knee inflammation. Apparently he's back to some light work, but no return date is set. He has struggled this year with the Cubs. As we gear up for action on Thursday, National League Central sees Milwaukee and St. Louis vying for the division lead. Milwaukee leading the Central much of this season. They're currently 49-40 after a hot start. Cardinals started slow, and now they're kind of getting it together. They are 2 games back at 48-43. Cardinals have been about 2 games back now for about a month. They just cannot close the gap, what's left of that gap, with the Milwaukee Brewers. Pittsburgh is in 3rd place, 11 games back of the lead, followed by the Cubs at 34-54, and the Reds are just 1 game behind the Cubs. Reds and Nationals are the only teams in the National League with a worse record than the Cubs. And as it stands now, Brewers would advance to the postseason as the division winner, and the Cardinals are positioned for a wild card spot. Our This and That segment is a look at news and notes from around the league. All-Star Game is next Tuesday in Los Angeles. Shohei Ohtani is on the American League roster as both a position player and a pitcher. No one has ever accomplished this until he did it last year. He's now done it in back-to-back seasons. Interesting clause in the CBA reached during the offseason. Commissioner Rob Manfred can name players to the All-Star Game. Legends, more specifically, and he's chosen to do so with Albert Pujols being added to the National League squad, Miguel Cabrera added to the American League roster. Little past the midway point of the season, and the American League East would put 4 teams in the postseason if the season ended today. All 5 teams in the East have a winning record. Staying in that division, the Toronto Blue Jays yesterday announced a managerial change. Charlie Montoyo is out despite the team's winning record. Montoyo has won exactly half of the games he has managed over the last 4 seasons. And 2 big win streaks are currently in progress. The Baltimore Orioles and Seattle Mariners both have won 10 games in a row. All that stands between the Cubs and the All-Star break is a 4-game series with the New York Mets at Wrigley Field. I really hope it's not a repeat of last weekend's 4-game series in Los Angeles with the Dodgers, where you see the Cubs playing competitively but not being able to get a win. It's going to be tough. There's no doubt about that. The Mets have led the National League East much of this season, despite their own share of a lot of injuries. And it's believed that the Mets will be active at the trade deadline. So you could think of this as, a big scouting series, as the Mets will be taking a look at multiple Cubs players, it would appear. Many stories linking them to a handful of Cubs players. Certainly sounds like Wilson Contreras is in his final days as a Cub. Whether he ends up in New York or not remains to be seen. Regardless, I think that's highly unfortunate. I think he would be a great leader for the Cubs moving forward, and he's having a career year. The addition of the designated hitter has allowed him to contribute offensively every day while avoiding the wear and tear of being an everyday catcher. He's played 76 games this year, only 46 of them behind the plate. Ian Happ also an all-star for the Cubs, and there's talk that he too may be traded. We'll see about that. I'm not sure if I believe those stories, but they certainly could get something in return for Happ, who's having a career year himself. He's finally getting everyday play. He's making the most of it. But I would love to see Contreras, Happ, Nico Horner as a core moving forward. Looks like Nico is the only one who seems to be guaranteed to be sticking around. Although it is sad that Nico will not be joining the other 2 in Los Angeles for the All-Star Game, because he's put up some great numbers both as a fielder and as a hitter this year. Series this weekend with the Mets begins tonight at 8:05 Eastern at Wrigley Field. It's Carlos Carrasco aiming for his 10th win for the Mets, while Keegan Thompson starts for the Cubs. Final 3 games of the series will begin at 2:20 each day. All 4 on Marquee Sports Network. If you don't have access there, Friday's game also on MLB Network. Shaping up to be an interesting couple of weeks. After the All-Star break, we will see who remains on the roster into the month of August, as it looks like there will be another flurry of trades in the offing. Follow us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen to yours. All things Chicago Cubs in under 10 minutes. This is the Bricks and Bleachers Podcast.